What do you think near-death experiences do? What do you think they bring to the conversation about fear surrounding death?
You know, the fear of what happens after your death if you've been good enough to stay there or to go to heaven or go to hell. Those kind of things are invested in us because of the religions that are out there. It's not only Christianity, but also Islam. Um, Maybe not so much Judaism, because in Judaism it's believed that if you have been bad, even though I don't know what is bad, but if you have been bad, you go to a hell-like environment temporarily, but you will eventually go to heaven. Something I don't understand why Christianity didn't take that up, because Christianity is based on Judaism. Anyway, if you look at NDEs, apart from the distressing end, but there is unconditional love for everyone. Why would um, one part of oneness be kept outside in distress? That's not logical. That's why I don't believe in a hell-like environment. I think we all go home. And that's also what NDEs say. We go home. And that's not here where we are sitting. I'm sitting in my home. This is not my real home. My real home is over there somewhere.
My guest today is Robert Christophor Coppes. He is a scientist and retired financier who has studied near death experiences for decades and has lectured on the topic in the US and Europe. His latest book on NDEs is called Impressions of Near Death Experiences, and it, in fact, is a compilation of hundreds of quotes from more than 100 experiencers. He considers them the best tutors in life. Previous books on near death experiences are Essence of Religions and Messages from the Light. He currently lives in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Bob, I am so blessed to have you here with me today. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time to come and share some of your research with us. It means so much to me.
It's so nice to be with you and from all over the other side of the big ocean, well, the smaller ocean. But it's very nice that I could be on your show, that I can be on your show. Thank you very much.
And I want to get started with how you became interested in near death experiences in the first place.
Okay, yeah, that's I've been raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, and with hell and purgatory. And I never, as a child, I never thought that was right. I had the feeling that's a kind of uh, fearfulness that shouldn't be there. And then once I was about 20 or 21, I read the book by Raymond Moody, Life After Life. And in it, there is a woman talking about her life review. In her life review, no one judged her. And then I thought, that's correct. That's how it is. That's how I felt it should be, or it is. And then that triggered my interest in NDE. So I looked up all some of the research, but I had to do my career. Well, I don't have to do my career, but I did it. It was in economics, and then 20 years later, I looked again if there was more research done, and I found a whole group in the United States, but I overlooked my own country. There is a big group and very good research being done in the Netherlands too on this subject, and that really carried me along. And that's where it started. That I wrote a few books on NDEs. One on NDEs and religion. Actually, that was something that I wanted to research for myself, just for myself. But it got out of hand. It was so big that I thought, well, I can just might as well just publish it. And then and then I wrote another book. And then finally, I wrote this book that you just mentioned. And I'll just show it again. It's um, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, and it contains hundreds of quotes of NDEs, and I think that's my best book because of not because I wrote it, but because NDEs wrote. They gave the quotes, they gave the words that are in the book, and it's mainly them. I started looking into NDEs somewhere around the year 2000, and then I got into contact with people in the US and in the Netherlands, and then I got to know many people. So it started with getting to know many people, and also on IANS and on NERF, there's websites where you can find a lot of stories of NDEs. I use them as well. So I think about um, 75 of those people that are in my book, having more than a few hundred quotes, that 75% or 75 people of those 100 I spoke directly, either by mail or just face to face. And the others are from books or from the IANS website. And I wanted to have um, the possibility for people to look back at the source of my information that I get it from. So I used also books from NDEs, explicitly books from NDEs. There are books of NDEs that are very famous, like Anita Morjani or even Alexander. Everyone knows them. But there are so many very interesting stories about NDEs that write their story in a book that doesn't become that famous, but they are still very interesting. And I read a lot of those books, and that's also where I got my information from. So it's information that I wanted to be sure that it's traceable to the reader. That's how a scientist tries to work. It must be traceable.
Absolutely. And so, as a scientist, what were you hoping to gain from studying near death experiences?
That's a very good question. Well, what I wanted to understand is, you know, if people have an NDE, they most of the time start about telling their story about how the accident was or how the heart failure came about and stuff like that. But I want to see further. I wanted to have the next phase. That's where they have their experience because I was interested in the messages. I was interested in the look and feel of this other world. And so I went into those stories and then if you go into the stories, you find actually that there are some topics that keep reoccurring. And those are the topics that I used in my book as chapters. Like, for instance, of course, uh, how do you get out of your body? There are so many stories of people that tell things about that. How do you get into your body? That's another thing. After effects. That's after you had such an experience. Um, it is something you have to cope with. Some things happen to your body. Some things happen to your mind. Some people become psychic or mediumistic, um, but also like the light, unconditional love, life reviews, also distressing NDEs, things like that. So there's 12 subjects that I wanted to go into and have quotes that only pertain to that particular subject to give people the opportunity to get their own impression of what an NDE is, because NDEs are ineffable. It's difficult to read from only one story what an NDE is or what the other side of life is. You need to know more. You need to see more perspectives. I also compare that to looking at the palace on the dam here in Amsterdam. If you're on the dam and you look at the palace, you see only the front side. You don't see the back side. You don't see the sides. You don't see the roof. You don't see the interior. So you need more points of view to get a good impression of what it really is the palace on the dam. But that's also with NDEs. You need more stories to get a kind of a impression. You'll never understand. We will never understand here on Earth, while being in 3 dimensions, what really is out there. But if you read a lot of stories, you get a good look and feel of what it is. That's what I wanted to do.
What do you feel are the most common threads that you see in most near death experiences?
The most interesting thing, I think, is a life review. There are many aspects that are very interesting, but a life review is something that is really, it's overwhelming. Well, everything is overwhelming for the NDE, but a life review really does it. And the fact that I will give you a story of an NDE from a woman in the Netherlands to show what I really want to say in my book. It is a woman who had her NDE, who lived in the World War. She was a child during the war, and just after the war, we were a war-torn country. There was nothing there. We didn't have so much food, and then she had her mother had some sweets and gave it to her to share that with friends in school. She did that. And then later on in her life, she had her uh, some medical issue, and she had her near-death experience. And then in her near-death experience, she had her life review. And in her life review, she saw that moment when she was sharing those sweets with the schoolmates. So she was like, I don't know, 8 or 10 or something. She was small. And then she saw how it affected the girl that she shared the sweets with, because she saw how valuable she was thought to be to have those sweets. And the interesting thing is that it didn't stop only with her, with the schoolmate, but it also affected the mother, even though she had never seen the mother. And it went even further. So there's a ripple effect there. It's, whatever you do, it has an effect beyond what you can see or beyond your own reach. It goes further. That also applies to not so nice things that we do. We all do those kind of things, of course. But there is another part of her story that she had. There was another schoolmate who had lice. You know, these little monsters crawling in your hair, and they itch. And at that moment in time, there was no shampoo like we have now to get rid of those. So this school friend of hers asked the NDEer, can you please help me because they itch so? So can you find some of them? And then instead of doing that quietly, she made a big fuss out of it. She said, okay, come on with me and I'll get rid of your lice. And then everyone could hear that. And in her life review, she heard it. Um, she felt it as if she was the school friend. And that's a thing that's being said so often. People in their life review, they feel what they do to others as if they are that other. So she was the school friend with the lies, and she felt how her heart was stabbed by the words that she herself uttered. So, I mean, that's how very direct can it be that you are the other, that there is actually, and then the conclusion that I make is that there is no difference or no separation between you and the others. And I make that conclusion because there are so many people that say in their life review that they could um, clearly see and exactly see how it was for the other side, for the person that they acted being nice or being not so nice. So you can feel what it is to be the other. There's no division. So we are one. That's where it boils down to, I
Is there a judgment or someone judging us during the life review?
think. No, no. That's what I understand from so many people. There is no judgment. Well, there is a kind of a judgment. If there's a, but there, if there is a judgment, then it's you. You do the judging, no one else. And there is a very nice story in my book about a Boy Scout who almost drowned and had his NDE. And in his NDE, he saw an angel standing next to him. And with the angel, he was seeing his life review. And when it was over, he said to the angel, "Oh, I hope I will not be judged too severely." And then the angel said, "Well, listen, you will be judged by the most powerful judge there is." And then the Boy Scout went a little bit afraid. And he said, "When will that happen?" And then the angel said to him, "It has already happened. You are the judge." So it shows you, and this is not only in this case, in this particular example, but there is more people that say no one judges you. The only one who judges you, if you want it to be the case, then it's you yourself. I even came across a story where someone was kind of um, depressed and angry about what this person did himself, judging severely himself, and then the light that was there uh, took, well, said, "You don't have to be so judging on yourself. Um, Look at why you did those things. There was a reason why you did those things. They didn't just occur just out of nothing. There is a history that goes before, and so there is a reason why you did these things. So if you judge yourself, but if you are too harsh about yourself, you're being protected by the light. I thought that was a wonderful story too.
That is a wonderful story. It's nice to know that we're not being judged, that someone's not going to punish us if we make mistakes. We're only human. And I think that's part of the human experience to
Absolutely.
make mistakes. And that's how we learn. That's how we learn to better ourselves. We, eh, we learn from suffering, you know, we're not going to learn if everything's perfect and things just go our way and everything feels amazing all the time. There's no motivation to improve
Yeah.
ourselves.
Exactly. That, if everything was hunky dory and everything went fine, then the only intense decision you can take is what kind of vegetables you're going to eat or what your food is going to be. I mean, there's nothing else. Strive and things that happen to you, it's all to give us the opportunity to make choices, and in the choices you can show um, how nice you are, or how you the point is that something that I understand as well, we are all divine. So what we need to do is to show our divinity, and the only way in which we can do that is when there are difficulties along the way, because then you can show who you are. um, Thinking of that, the lady in the Netherlands, she also said, the story about the lice that I said just now, that I said, she thought it was so horrible what she had done to the schoolmate. But she said there was something else that was even worse, that, that she really felt horrible about. It was not that she had done this to her school friend. I mean, that was terrible. She was very sorry for that. But there was something else that she thought was worse than that. And what was worst was the fact that she saw there were options. There had been options for her to choose a different way. There were several options. And she saw that the option that she chose took away love in the world, or decreased the love and the light in the world. And she saw there was another option that she could have chosen, and it would have given so much joy and light into the world, and she was so sad that she hadn't chosen that option. So what I want to say is that all the difficulties that we go through, the listeners, you and me, we all have our strives and difficulties to cope with. But in those difficulties, we have options, and it's about choosing the nice options. And there is no good and bad. That's the idea. There's you will not be judged. It is just to feel what it is you do. It's something like that.
Do you feel that there are validating experiences that can point in the direction of proving that near death experiences are real and they're valid experiences that truly happen? And I ask this because not because I doubt near death experiences, but a lot of people do, and they need
Mhm.
something more validating than just a story that someone said, but they need some correlation in this world and the that connects this world or the other world to the experience itself or the person. Have you found that there's many validating experiences that happen afterwards?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's good research done also by people in the Netherlands, and they wrote a book about it. It's published by IANS as well, like my book is published by IANS. And the other book is The Self Does Not Die. It's also been translated in Spanish. And it's in my book, there's also about 10 stories of veridical observations. So those are verifiable out of body observations. And they are very important, I think, in giving circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real. And I'll try to explain to your listeners uh, what those are. So it's verifiable out of body experiences. The NDE most of the time starts with an out of body experience. Sometimes it goes so quick that you're immediately in the other realm and you don't notice how that goes. But sometimes people can roam around where they were at the time of sort of dying, like in a car crash or in their hospital or during an operation, and they can see what is happening around them, either in the room next door or on the attic or on the ledge of the hospital. Those are actual stories. And then they come back again in their body after their experience, and then they say, well, I've been in the next door room and I saw this and that, or I was in the ledge of the hospital and I saw a shoe there. So those are important stories because if your body is incapable of seeing those things in the other room or elsewhere, then how is it possible that you still know these things? And that's because your consciousness can be separate from your body. Your consciousness does not need your body to exist. The other way around, your body cannot exist without your consciousness. So if your consciousness is separated from your body too long, you die. That's also something you get out of NDEs. But the other way around is still possible. Your consciousness exists without your body. And there are many of those stories, very nice stories. Maybe I'll give you an example.
Yes,
Uh,
please.
like, like for instance, there's an example of which ones shall I tell? Well, there is an example of a guy who went to see the doctor and he needed surgery. Uh, they took me into the operating room, and the doctor came in, explaining to him that they would give him anesthesia, and they did that, and then he was out. And the moment later, he was up against the ceiling looking down, and thought, well, I can still see what is happening. And then he saw the doctor doing stuff with his elbows. He had his hands uh, pressed to his chest and his elbows both pointing outwards. And he was like, it seemed like flapping with his elbows, as if he was a bird or something. But he was actually pointing to the nurses what they had to do. And later, this guy, when he came through after the operation, he said that to the doctor, and the doctor was scared first that he was being there was a litigation going on. And then later on, Bruce Grayson, a famous researcher of NDEs, heard about this story. He was told about this and rushed to the hospital to speak to the doctor and explain that it was just a research being done. And then the doctor explained, I do that to keep my hands uncontaminated, to keep them sterile. That's why I don't touch anything. I just point out with my elbows what the nurses have to do. And this is something that no one knew of his patients, that he did this. And yet he knew it. He could describe it very well. He could describe more of the operation. And the doctor was flabbergasted that the patient had seen all that. And he thought, that's amazing. There's more of these stories. There's hundreds of these stories going out there, and you can read some of them, 10 of them in my book. But there's in the other book, The Self Does Not Die. There's hundreds of those. Very interesting.
There's stories out there, for example, Dr. Eben Alexander or Anita Morjani, where scientifically you can say something miraculously happened because after they came back, they were completely healed within a very short period of time. Is that something that you see is common in near death
Yes.
experiences?
Yes. Well, common I wouldn't say, but it occurs regularly that people are able to heal themselves. There's even a story of a man who had all these injuries inside of his body. I don't know how to call that, intestines, I think. And um, the doctors were afraid that they would lose him, but he had his NDE, and after his NDE, he said, I could feel where the injuries were in my body, and I could see where the bleeding was, and I could make it stop there, and I could redirect the blood flow going somewhere else, and I could heal myself by just doing that in thought. And the doctor was so amazed that this guy was recovering so quickly that in one evening, the patient was in his room. This is actually in my book as well, this story. And the patient was in his room sleeping at night, and then woke up and saw the doctor sitting in the corner of the room. And then he said to the doctor, why are you here? You should tend to someone else because I'm okay. And then the doctor said, I cannot keep my eyes off of you because you are a miracle. This is not possible, yet I see it happening in front of my eyes, and I can't understand it, and it works. And later, the patient understood that the doctor had a child who had the similar kind of injuries but passed away. So there was an emotional component there as well.
Do you have any stories that you think would be of particular interest to, say, a skeptic to help open their mind or give them some evidence that there is truly life after death?
I would say to the skeptic, look at the theoretical observations. I know it is still not, it's not a scientific, strict scientific proof that uh, there is life after life or life after death. That's difficult to really prove. But if you look at the theoretical observations, so the ones that I just gave you an example from, it's the verifiable out of body experience. If you really look at those, if and there are so many of those, um, then you have to acknowledge that there is circumstantial evidence that your consciousness can exist outside of your body, be in another place and see stuff there and then come back again. into your body. Um, it still not is a proof that there is a life after life. But if this is true, if this is something we can see as circumstantial evidence that your consciousness can exist outside of your body, then look at the stories that these people have. These people have NDEs. They talk also about the other part of their experience, that they have been in, well, heaven or whatever name you want to call it, that there is this unconditional love, that we are all actually part of a oneness, that love is important and that there is light out there, there's no judgment, all these things that we know from NDEs, those things I think are also true. If you look at circumstantial evidence about consciousness being separate from your body. But you know, I also know that real skeptics are really difficult to talk to, and I'll tell them this, what I just said to you, but after a while I say to them, it's fine with me. If you don't want to go into the information that I give to you, then that's fine with me. You just lead your life. You'll see yourself. And I have the feeling there are also people that believe that the Earth is flat, while there is so much evidence out there that it's not the case. So I feel that they are sort of these people that believe the Earth is flat. And I respect them. I don't agree with them, of course, but it's no use to reason against them. I think then I will stop.
Would you say then that this physical plane, the earth, would be like a spiritual playground, a place where we come to have different experiences and see what it feels like to be uh, a poor homeless person or, a rich world leader? We can be all these things.
In my book, there is a chapter on why are we on Earth? Because sometimes NDEers get to hear something like that as a bonus, or some NDEers really ask about that because they want to know. And then there are many different answers they get. Some of them is like it's a playground, just exactly what you said. This is the place we have to just try to be happy. The whole idea is to be happy and to make other people happy, not only yourself, but make other people happy as well. Because if you make other people happy, you will feel the happiness yourself. And there's this, in my book, there's also a very nice story about a little girl of 8 years old who was assaulted by two men while she was playing somewhere near a pond, and one of those guys tried to drown her. And then she was underwater with her face facing upwards, looking through the water to the sun. She saw the sun, um, and at the same time she was hovering above the scene, looking down on the scene, and she could see her father coming to her rescue. And then, but she had her NDE, and she was 8 years old. And in her NDE, she had this conversation with this elderly person, and she said, "It couldn't have been anyone else than God. It must have been God because there is no one else." And then, and then God spoke to her and said, "You have to go back to Earth. There's things for you to do." Um, and life is sort of easy. And I'll give you a recipe for life. Life is with a recipe of 4 ingredients. And the ingredients are love, be loved, just be, and experience life. Those were the ingredients that God gave to this little girl, Christina. And so it's love, be loved, just be, and experience life. And I thought that's beautiful because, you know, only the first two items you have to do something. To love someone else requires action. to be loved by others requires action too. You have to allow others to love you too. Sometimes for people it's difficult. But the other two, just be and experience life. You can do just by sitting on a chair and doing nothing. That's that you still you are and you experience life. But that's not really exciting. It's we have to do something more than just sitting on a chair. We have to go about and express our divinity. And she said, actually, she said also something like, enjoy life. This is our playground. And those were the same words that you just chose to introduce this question to me.
How do you have a discussion with someone who thinks that the near death experiences are a result of medication or of their imagination or hallucination during a coma? Are there is there any evidence or stories out there that can say that no, indeed, these are true experiences, and how can they do that?
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question. Oftentimes it's been said that NDEs are the result of a lack of oxygen, for instance, or some substances that are created in a dying brain and stuff like that. There had been a wonderful research done in the Netherlands by the group that was here, and it was a scientific research. It was published in the Lancet. And the Lancet is a very important medical journal, and it was research done in something like 13 hospitals in the Netherlands over a time span of 10 years, or it is 13 years and 10 hospitals. I can't, I don't remember anymore. But the protocol of this research is that all the patients that were brought in with a cardiac arrest were asked after they had been resuscitated, because otherwise you can't answer a question. So those were the surviving cardiac arrest patients. The only question that was asked is, did you have any recollection of the time you were out? So, and of the 344 patients, and that is a correct number, about 62 had a recollection. So that's about 20%. Now, and then it's interesting because then you have two groups, one group with an experience and one group without an experience. And those were the NDEs, of course. And then you can see if there's a difference between those two groups, because if there is a difference, then that could be the cause of an NDE. Now, both groups had a cardiac arrest. So both groups had a lack of oxygen in their brain. Both groups were dying. So both groups had perhaps substances that are created in the process of dying. Other items were researched, like medical things or the fear of death before they had their experience, and several other topics were researched, and none of them were found to be significant, statistically significant. So, and that's how do you say that? That's scientific talk to say that there's none of these things that were researched can be thought of as a reason to create an NDE. So lack of oxygen, which is always mentioned, is not one of those. Substances in the brain that are created that come there because it's a dying brain, those don't cause NDEs. So, and that's important research. And the interesting thing of this research is that it can be repeated elsewhere in another country or in another subset. And it had been done also in the United States and the United Kingdom with the same results. So that's important research done.
Definitely. I think one of the things that makes near death experiences and other spiritual experiences so difficult is that spirit doesn't move with the laws of physics, it's outside the laws of physics. And so it makes it a little more difficult for us to study the experiences. Um, we can't really recreate them in a lab. So
That would
therefore,
be immoral if we would recreate.
that's right.
We have to make someone die first, almost, and then get them back again. No, that's
Right,
impossible.
right. And even if we could, there's no way to truly study it. It's not, it's a subjective experience. And it's up to the observer to relay the information that they've gained from these near-death experiences. We can't go into the near-death experience with them and write a report about it. So it's a little difficult to study. So these things that you're doing, the work that you're doing is so important because we've got to look at these in a whole new paradigm. We can't use the old scientific methods
Yeah.
um, to examine these experiences. And you're a pioneer on the edge of um, really bringing some wisdom into the world about some very important experiences that we can help people to live a better life um, with less fear.
That's important. You know, two things: the a better life, uh, but also I think in physics, the research in physics with quantum physics and all that stuff that goes about, we they are not we, because I'm not part of that, but they are moving in the direction that they are surprised by all kinds of stuff that they see. They start to understand that um, the objective um, reality that we, the reality, the objective reality that we think it's out there, is not as objective as it is. There, we, the world also is influenced by the observer. That's one of those experiments that is being done, I think, in quantum mechanics and stuff like that. So there's a lot of movement there, and I think, and I'm not knowledgeable there, but I know that there's movement in the research in physics, and also like there are researchers that get Nobel prizes. So those are not the, I mean, they are the good ones, the good researchers. They find that they want to try to reconcile Einstein's relativity theory with quantum mechanics. Both theories work independently, but they cannot be reconciled yet. There needs to be one overarching theory that comprises everything. And there are movements there that scientists say, well, we can do that when we allow more dimensions. Like we have the three space dimensions and time, but they say we need more dimensions, and we cannot understand what it is in a world with more dimensions. And also, time is something that is not linear in that respect. So what I want to say, I don't know these things, but science is moving also in a direction that they say that they allow for perhaps these kind of experiences that maybe make sense. And then the better world that you just mentioned, I think that's, I think NDEs are absolutely important. That's why I always urge NDEs to talk about their stories, write it down, put it in on the websites of IANS or NERF or any other website, because you know most people don't know that there are so many of those people out there. There's like 4 to 5% of the population has had such an experience. Those are millions in the United States. They might live next door to you, but you don't know because you don't talk about these things. And I think that if people really understand that there are veridical observations and that that's the circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real, then they might start being interested in what an NDE is and what the messages are. And the main messages, if you ask me, I'd leave it up to the reader to come to their own conclusion if they go through my book, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. But if you'd ask me, it is unconditional love and oneness. We are one. What I do to you, I eventually do to myself. I will feel it. Maybe not now. I can walk away. I think I can walk away if I hurt you. But eventually, it is also something that I will get back in my life review. And it hurts universe if I do something bad to you. But let's put it in a positive way. If I do something nice to you, I do something nice to universe. I do something nice to the light. I do something nice for everyone and for myself. Because it's oneness that's out there. That's what I think.
Just lovely. Oneness is something that I strive to understand on a daily basis. And I always ask my guests who've had near death experiences if they can describe that so that I can try to gain a deeper understanding of what this oneness actually feels like because I can conceptualize it, but I can't feel it. And I think it's such a gift to know that that exists, that we are one. And sometimes I feel like I'm on the edge. Have you ever felt it yourself?
It's difficult to get an idea of that. I understand what you feel because I haven't had an NDE, although it's not really certain. Someone told me that I had an NDE as a child. She saw that from my aura. I don't know. But oneness is something that I've been thinking of so often because it's being said by so many people. There are wonderful quotes in my book on the oneness. So we are one together, and we are also, as it seems, one with God or the light or how you want to call it. But an extreme example of oneness would be like, if a child is born, it could be a baby child, a human child, or a puppy, a dog, a cat, or a pig, or you mentioned it. There is a vacancy there. Something needs to be in it. So who is going to go in there in the new body? There's only one. It's call it God or the light, the divinity, goes into this little child and grows up. But the child thinks that it's separate from everyone else. Not at first, because as a baby, as a toddler, you think you are one with your mother and father. But after a while, you understand that if you hurt yourself, they don't feel anything, and vice versa. So we learn to understand that we are separate from others. But in fact, that's not true because we are all divine. There's divinity in us, there's God in us. And when we die, this God goes back again. There's a very nice um, quote also in my book, and that's something that I find difficult to understand, but it's a quote. I mean, I want to give the quotes even if I don't understand them. This person said, once I was outside in my body, it was wonderful because I didn't feel pain, I didn't feel strife or anxiety. It was wonderful. And then she said, it went further because after a while, even my consciousness was dissolved in something that is a big, I don't know how you call it, but it's a big something. So it dissolved in something else. So your consciousness, your role you play on earth um, is being dissolved. And the only thing that remains is call it God or the light or whatever it is, but it goes back to this big other light. That's what how she said it. She said it a little bit different, but that's what it boils down to.
And talking or trying to understand this oneness and knowing how important love is, there's an overwhelming amount of near death experiences that are just full of ineffable joy, love, peace, ecstasy, just the most incredible positive experiences that they can't even explain. But there's a few that are distressing. How do those fit into the love and the God and the oneness or the universe?
Yeah, there are distressing NDEs, and they are a subset of the NDEs that we know, but there are enough to say it's not an anomaly. So they are there, and the interesting thing is now we have well, more of those examples. We know for sure that you cannot say that people who have been bad only get distressing endings, and people who've been good only get blissful ones. Moreover, the terms good and bad is difficult because where's the line that divides them, and how do you look at good and bad? But the fact is that there are examples of people who have been sort of bad, and they are in my book. One is Daniel Brinkley. He said of himself that he was a horrible person. He stole bikes. He was in countless fights in school. And later he went to be part of this American organization that went to other countries to kill off certain people. It was a government organization. I just repeat what is in his book. And he one time he blew up a hotel with 50 people in it just to get out one, to take out one. So would that be a nice person? He said I was horrible, yet he had a wonderful experience. There's other examples of just very common people, and one of those wrote a book, and it's very brave of her to do. It's M.K. McDaniel, who wrote Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat. And she said, I had a horrible experience, really hell-like. There was illness, there was AIDS, there was prostitution, there were crab-like creatures crawling. There was a devastated city she was in, and she thought it was all real. And she said later, you know, if I look back on my life, I understand that maybe I created all these things myself because she had been um, raped severely. She had been afraid of AIDS afterwards, and there were a number of other things that happened to her during her life that she could maybe relate to what she saw during her NDE. So the idea is, and that's also what Nancy Adams Bush, and other researcher, found, is that maybe during the first phase of our NDE, we still have the ability to come up with images from our own past or from the collective unconsciousness that pop up, like the concept of Jung, the collective unconscious, that just there are images that are not very nice there. They could pop up, and then it could happen to you. It could happen to anyone. So it could happen to me. But there is a, to keep it on a positive note, there are also NDEs. So what I say is that um, distressing NDEs might very well come from our own mind, or from the collective unconscious. So, but there are also NDEs who explicitly hear that there is no hell and no purgatory. There's also some of those quotes in my book. And on that positive note, I want to leave it for the listeners, because otherwise they think, well, I don't believe myself in hell. I don't believe that these things exist. And I think I know also there's also some quotes in my book that people could change their NDE. in some sort of way. So it seems that you have some kind of influence over it.
In researching near death experiences, have your personal beliefs been changed in any way? Do you live your life any differently now?
Um, yes, uh, the point exactly what I mentioned before is that I came to validate NDEs as true because of the circumstantial evidence that is out there. That was very important for me as a researcher. And after I acknowledged that, I was very much aware of the main messages. And the main messages is that unconditional love or love in itself, and unconditional love is a word that doesn't relate to the real thing. That's also what some NDEs say. It's more than that. Unconditional love is so important, and that we are one. So if I do something to you, I actually do it to myself. If people would really realize that, they will change their way of living. And I believe we are going there. I really believe that eventually we will see this kind of truth and people will start to change their way of living, be more loving towards others and nature, towards nature. It's very important.
One of the greatest fears that we have, I think, as a society, especially in our culture in the United States and probably around the world too, is that there's a fear of death. Not only fear of dying itself, but fear of punishment after death. You
Mm.
know, if we weren't perfect, if we made mistakes. And what do you think near death experiences do? What do you think they bring to the conversation about fear surrounding death?
You know, the fear of what happens after your death if you've been good enough to stay there or to go to heaven or go to hell. Those kind of things are invested in us because of the religions that are out there. It's not only Christianity, but also Islam. Um, Maybe not so much Judaism, because in Judaism it's believed that if you have been bad, even though I don't know what is bad, but if you have been bad, you go to a hell-like environment temporarily, but you will eventually go to heaven. Something I don't understand why Christianity didn't take that up, because Christianity is based on Judaism. Anyway, if you look at NDEs, apart from the distressing end, but there is unconditional love for everyone. Why would um, one part of oneness be kept outside in distress? That's not logical. That's why I don't believe in a hell-like environment. I think we all go home. And that's also what NDEs say. We go home. And that's not here where we are sitting. I'm sitting in my home. This is not my real home. My real home is over there somewhere. That's what I believe.
Do you have any fear of death?
I don't have fear of being dead. I have some kind of fear of the way I will die. Um, I don't know how that will be, and it's going to be a surprise. So I will go into that surprise one day. But that's the only thing that worries me, not what happens afterwards. I'm absolutely sure that there is this wonderful other place that I will be part of. We all will be part of, but not me as Robert Christopher Coppes, but as a part of the divine, just like anyone else.
If my viewers have questions for you or they'd like to purchase your book, how can they find you?
My book can be found on Amazon, and they can find me, and I will always answer questions when they go to my website, which is www.oneness.com. bobcopus.com. And there is a file that they can fill out, and I will always answer questions.
And I'll link all of that below so any of my viewers that want to find you can just go to the description down below and find you easily. Do you have any last words of wisdom for my viewers?
I would go back to what Christina said: love, be loved, just be and experience life. I think that those are wonderful. That's a wonderful recipe. And I wish you, all your listeners, and you all the best. I wish you all well.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for that wonderful recipe. I think that is a beautiful way of looking at life and a wonderful philosophy that you can't go wrong with. So, thank you for
Thank you
being
for
my guest.
being on your show. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you for being my guest. It was amazing to have you and to learn from you and to share your wisdom with my viewers. Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.